Murphy McCullough, and I've been with Skanska Commercial Development since January of 2011, and I'm the EVP for the Seattle office.
Okay, so in January of 2011, what was happening here in Seattle? Which hire were you in the Seattle office? What was the state of affairs for commercial development here?
Myself and my boss at the time started on the same day, which was January 31st, 2011. And we did not have an office. USB, our construction unit, did not have a space for us. And so we were actually kind of hanging out in other people's offices that we knew. And then once we did move in here, we didn't have lights for like the first 3 or 4 months in our office. So that was the office experience. On the on the opportunity side, we felt extremely fortunate. The market, we were just coming out of a bad market here, and we had all the flexibility. It was like a startup. We had all the flexibility in the world to go do what we wanted to do, and Skanska had all this cash behind us that a big company has. So, we were really, really excited to get started and find new deals, and it really was a startup. So it was really exciting and fun.
So what were the conversations like in Seattle back then? So each city has a little bit of a different take on that, because in some cities the building units were well known. In DC had been kind of in and out, so it wasn't as well known. So when you started having those conversations and saying, I'm with Skanska and we're here to develop and we're looking at these properties, were we known? Were we not known? How much establishing did you have to do to convince people that we were a developer? What was it like then?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things. First, when I first heard about the opportunity, I was skeptical, just because Skanska is known as a construction company here. There was no knowledge of them actually being a developer, a developer from a local market. And so for me, I was actually really shocked when I heard about the opportunity. It sounded like a developer's dream. And so I would say that my colleague and I, who started on the same day, both of us had deep real estate experience and were well known in the Seattle market. So I think there was, when we came here, people knew that it was definitely a real estate gig. It took a very long time for everyone to really get it, and it really took us to start executing on projects for the market to really understand that, whoa, this is a real platform that is performing, and we can go do things that other people can't, because we're 100% cash. And so, the market did shift pretty quick to understanding that we are a serious player, but it is still playing out. And, now it's 7 years later or more, right? And there's still people who know us as a construction company and don't really understand that we do development. So.
Were there any, and this is an honest answer, it's an internal film, so
Yeah.
A lot of the stories that we're getting have been kind of growing pains and challenges along the way. Because you were the fourth, and we started the first 3 offices for a little bit ahead, and then Seattle came in always on plan, but came in a little bit behind that. Was there any, in the development, in the U.S. business unit that we built here, some learnings here, was there any kind of knowledge transfer? Was there anything we were able to glean from those? I know you've been working in this development market extensively, but from the company, for doing it for Skanska, was there anything that we picked up from Boston, DC, Houston that we were able to bring in?
Yeah, it was interesting, because at the time we definitely had ties to everyone, but it was such a startup that we had learned more basics, but most of the basics were still, since it was still so early days, we hadn't sold 10th and G yet and things, and most of the learnings were really more from Sweden than our other markets. Our CEO.
Are they looking for you? That's Dan and somebody that just walked over and then walked back.
Sorry, are they ruining the film?
No, okay. Fine. I just know they can
No. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. So you were saying most of it was from Sweden more than from...
Yeah, you think about it, we had a Swedish CEO, and a Swedish CFO. And they were coming out and training us, on the financial markets and what kind of makes sense and works. But it was still really in that mode of what works in Sweden, and what's gonna pass through the board. At the same time, still having a lot of flexibility on what the market is here, and like how can we bring something forward that would make sense for the board to approve. Sorry, I'm stuttering. But we did. I would say from the very early on, we did spend a lot of time with the other markets. Skanska's always been really, really great at that, making sure that everyone gets to know each other and learns from each other. But I felt we're on the West Coast, we're the furthest away, and I do feel like we were a little bit left on our own to go do what we wanted to kind of do within like reason. So, yeah, exactly.
Okay, talk about the first opportunity, and just looking for a little storytelling, but short form storytelling. We'll have to get condensed down into a video. So we set up. We were working in an office with no lights. What was the first opportunity we found that we pursued? Not all the ones that maybe we passed on, but the first one that we had.
The first one that. So. Yeah, our first project that we put together that was extremely complicated in a number of ways was Stone 34, which is in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle. And it was really the first time I've worked on a deal where we signed the ground lease and the tenant lease for the whole building on the same day. That was after a significant amount of work with the community. It was the first Living Building Challenge pilot program within the city of Seattle. And there was a lot of contamination on the land and all kinds of negotiations trying to make sure we could put this together. We literally had a description of the building of one page when we signed it, and then designed the building around that. It's almost the other way around. You almost always design the building and then your tenants come. This was the opposite. So we were trying to figure out a description of what the building is going to be with some basic images, and then we designed to that. Most tenants don't have that much faith in you, and so since this was our first deal as well, we were surprised they actually had that much faith in us.
So we had it fully leased before we ever started?
Correct.
Okay. Was it all Brooks at the time? Or
actually, there was one floor that they had rights on to take if they wanted it, and they ended up taking that right later. So they had initially they were taking 80% of the building, and then later they went and took 100.
And in a few sentences, generally, how did that first project go? So we had the lease from the beginning. How did constructing it, finishing it up, divesting it go?
Excellent, absolutely excellent. I mean, everything about that project. Everyone was hyper focused on it. It was our first project, and so. From making sure the design was right and working with the community and making sure Brooks was happy and this building could be something that, even though it was a little bit of a build-to-suit for what they wanted, it was a lease. So when this thing rolls, it needs to be a market building. All the way through divestment went exceptionally well. And in fact, we still hang out with Jim and Tamara with Brooks. We go out to lunch or dinner with them every 6 or 7 months, and but the relationship was extremely strong. It was one of those projects that you just won't forget, just because everyone involved. USB did an amazing job. It was not easy to figure out how to build a partial living building at that time because it was so new. So we had to do many things that the market was not used to, which normally means the cost goes up. But our rent was locked in, so we had to figure out how to afford those things and still meet the Living Building pilot program.
Tell me about the trail. Because we were there this morning when we filmed it. It's on our kind of scavenger hunt list of things to capture. So tell me.
Yeah. So our pitch to Brooks, this is what we went to them. They were looking. They started out with over 100 sites they were looking at, and when we showed up, they had shortlisted that down to 10. So all of a sudden we showed up and it was 11. And we went to their corporate headquarters and pitched to them that we're going to create a trailhead for them on the Burke-Gilman Trail. And wouldn't they rather be there than somewhere else in the suburbs or in some place that isn't really attracted to or attached to their brand and attached to running? So that was something that they glommed onto right off the bat, and we spent a lot of time with them really making the vision that they wanted it to be. That they also took a retail space on the ground floor, and to this day they organize runs every morning there. So it really is helping their brand, not just for the office space, which is attracting great employees, but for their customer as well, they're trying to get customer engagement on the ground floor, and do like runs and all kinds of nonprofit things too. So.
Okay. How do you think the commercial development brand is seen today in Seattle? So we're 10 years into the national brand now, 7 years here, 8 years. What do you think the client and tenant perception is, broker perception is out on the street of Skanska as a developer here? What are we known for?
It's extremely strong now. I mean, we are known to be that developer who does something that between the city and the community and our tenants, everyone wants what we're doing, and so that ends up opening a lot of opportunities for us. So from the broker relationship side, and whether it's land, whether it's leasing, or we're selling an asset, when something comes up, I mean, people are excited that they're going to be involved with something that is special and different and is going to serve their customers on a different level and a higher quality than most of the competition. So brand is extremely strong. Definitely, some people still learning our brand, but we do get people more and more reaching out to us because they've seen a building of ours or somebody told them that they need to talk with us, and so it is over time. It's just growing and growing, and it's getting more and more exciting. It's just more fun when people want to work with you and you've proven you can do special real estate and you're focused on relationships first and serving your customers. So we're excited here. We think we got a lot of opportunity coming in the future, and the team is definitely stepping up, and we're definitely growing the platform here.
Okay. The film is a retrospective on the first 10 years. The meeting theme, as you know, will be looking back, celebrating those successes, but then looking at the next 10 years. So open-ended question, but for our practice, what do you see on the horizon in the next 10 years for us?
For Seattle in particular, or everything?
It's open, yeah. It can be a local question. It can be commercial development nationally. What do you see for commercial development? And you can make it local.
Yeah.
It'll get mixed in with a lot of the other answers, so I think
yeah.
it'd be nice to have a local take on it.
I mean, I see us having just an incredibly powerful platform, being entrepreneurial, and we have our own money, that we can go do things that others can't. So what are those things that we could potentially go and do? I think we are definitely working on some of those things, but I think for the next 10 years, we have an opportunity now that we've really established our brand to leverage off of that into new markets, whether that's a new product type, whether that's a different city, whether that's sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But it really is something that most of the companies have a much harder time, trying to put together the capital and all the things that you would need to do something different. We don't have to do that. We can just, as long as it makes sense, we can present it to our board and go and do it, which is exceptionally powerful.
Is that I'll ask it the other way. What keeps you here personally? So you're obviously highly qualified. We're doing this a long time before you came to us. Why do you choose to stay at Skanska with this team and do what you do here?
It's the people, no question. Very strong value alignment with me personally and with other people here in Seattle and nationally, and very much so internationally as well. Seattle was colonized by a bunch of Swedes and Norwegians, and so maybe that's part of the DNA here, but they feel like my people. And so that is a huge part of it. The second part is just incredibly entrepreneurial, which, I'm just absolutely addicted to deals. And so this is definitely the place to be. So I am definitely having a lot of fun and looking forward to staying here. Yeah.
Okay. Switch to Alley 111 now. Thank you for hearing me on those. I wanted to get the historical stuff. Yeah, because I think you've been here longer than anybody now, right? In this office? You're the
Yeah.
most tenured.
Lisa and I started on the same day. I'm trying, by the way, not to mention her name. I don't know if people want me to mention. Some people. There's people who like Lisa. I'm really good friends with her, and there's some people who don't want to mention her name. So I'm not really mentioning her.
You've done it
so
perfectly.
Okay.
Not because anyone likes her or doesn't like her, just so that it
Yeah.
doesn't have legs and we can use it beyond
Yeah.
go external
Okay.
without it being tied to any one person.
Okay.
I think you did it perfectly. Okay. Alley 111. Tell me about our first residential project in Seattle. And there are specific questions here, but just tell me the story first, and then we'll dig into pieces as we want to. So what had we done already when we decided to look at Alley 111, and why was it the right time to look at residential?
So Alley 111 was our third project here. Stone 34 was first. 400 Fairview was second, but closely thereafter, almost the same schedule, we engaged with the landowner for Alley 111. And we had been looking at residential market. Same with Boston was very, very much looking at Watermark Seaport at the time. And so it wasn't just us. We were thinking about this nationally as something that would make sense for our platform to potentially develop. And so we had been trying to find office sites, residential sites, and the more you look at sites, you don't necessarily look at where they are in terms of Seattle or Bellevue. You just want a really compelling site that makes sense for real estate. And for multifamily sites, it's a much smaller site, and so there's often more opportunities actually to buy multifamily land than there is for office land, because for office you need a much bigger site. And so this site came across our desk. We started looking at it. It became pretty clear that the landowner was going to go in foreclosure, and we could probably get a pretty good deal on it before that happened, because it was going to go to another developer that actually had the loan on it to foreclose on it. So we bought it a day before foreclosure. And our mission was to create something different in Bellevue. Most of the development there that had happened in the past was failed condo projects. So there are much bigger units, very different. They weren't set up to be for rent. And that market had been switching and changing really, really fast to a much younger demographic that wanted smaller, more compact units, more one bedroom instead of two or three. And so that was our mission, is to create something different. And we were really the first ones out of the ground in Bellevue to create that different product type to serve the market as it had changed.
What was the housing, the housing demand like in Seattle? Just a little bit of color for someone that's not here about the growth you've had in population and the places for people to live in this area.
I can't remember the exact numbers, so but yeah, I mean, generally, yeah, the trend in Seattle and Bellevue, there's just been an exceptional amount of job growth between Amazon, Google, Facebook, and many others. That there's been all this like office space, and Seattle's been lucky enough to be able to keep up on the multifamily, to have like housing for people as they move here from different cities and countries. And so it's been an extremely strong market in office and multifamily. Bellevue was a little bit different, just because it's a much smaller market. And multifamily wise, there hadn't been a lot developed because of all these failed condo projects that turned to be for rent. But those were all leased and the market was tightening up. So the market was extremely strong, and it was very clear that there was a missing product type in the market that no one was working on solving.
How did it go? So you walked us through kind of why we decided to do it, why that was a great value for us to acquire. Then what? Kind of keep going with the story for how did construction go? How did it lease up? What became of it?
Do you want me to? You had some questions on how did we get approvals and stuff. Do you want me to talk a little bit about?
Yes.
Because that's what happened next, which was a little bit of a challenge, but.
Yes, I'm looking. Let me just make sure we've hit the first one. The first time CD pushed the boundaries on a different offering. I think you walked through those.
So this was the first multifamily project that actually went to a request for investment to Sweden, and in Sweden, most for rent housing is rent controlled, and so when Sweden saw this, they were like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And they had definitely been like briefed, but I think when it actually hit, they were very worried about it. And we had one little note in there saying that there was Equity Residential, another company, wanted to maybe do a pre-sale. And they basically, instead of letting us just buy the land and going forward, developing ourselves, they were like, have a pre-sale or get a partner like now. That's the only way this thing is going to happen. There were some other reasons for that too, because the returns were lower and we needed to get our returns up. And when you JV or you do a pre-sale, the returns are much easier to solve for. So we did get approval and marched forward in getting a partner. So we did the first JV in CDUS's history. Boston was like right there with us though the whole time. So it wasn't like we were working together the whole time. So it wasn't like we were in isolation. But we definitely pushed through kind of the corporate structure to make something like this happen. And it really was not easy. It took a lot of time and a lot of convincing. We had folks from SFS, which is our Skanska Financial Services Bank, flying out here and trying to understand what we were doing, and all kinds of other conversations to really justify that this project makes sense. So we got a partner just before we started construction. So we had complete control over the entitlements and the design and the vision and what it should be. And then we brought in the partner later, just before construction started. So as soon as we closed on the joint venture, which was with Deutsche Bank, we started construction the next day. And the project went exceptionally well. It is now, it's up and operational. It was leased up above pro forma. We sold our interest to Deutsche Bank last year, and we did exceptionally well. So great project, lots of learning from our standpoint and from other markets. We're continuing to learn from them as well. We do have another multifamily project in Seattle now, and it's almost the tables are turned. Boston has been doing more multifamily than we have. I think they finished their second project, and so we're definitely learning from them on the next cycle and what makes sense, and trying to make sure going forward we're thinking about everything we should be thinking about.
What is the other one that we have?
2200 block here in Belltown. We just bought the land. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. You're very nice to keep including Boston, because everyone in Boston about everything is like Boston. They're
really sensitive, by the way.
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I shouldn't say they're super. I just should say that, they were working on Watermark Seaport before Alley 111 even came up, and we were able to get under control and get approvals and start construction before them. So they started earlier and started construction later, but when you look at the performance, that project actually did a lot better too. So.
But it's something that I assume if we just bought this land, we're interested in continuing residential. Like the bet proved out that it's
absolutely, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that. That that we learned that it's a space that we do want to continue in.
Yeah.
It's not a one-off.
Yeah, I think in general there were a lot of people within CDUS who had multifamily experience. So it was new for Skanska. It wasn't new for me and my colleague or for plenty of other folks in other markets. And so, I think this was something that really, hits all of the buttons that our investment platform wants, and was just a logical choice for us to get involved with. Definitely lower returns and lower risk, but a different market cycle as well, and a different risk profile, as I just said. So it's definitely growing the business and diversifying the business at the same time. So it makes a lot of sense.
Perfect. That's what I needed. Thank you. Okay. So now I'm just scanning your notes to make sure that we hit all the things that you said in writing. Yeah. We did not. Okay. All right. The project was successful. This is part of the question. The project was successful as part. It set stage for flexibility in our business model. Actually, you just did this too. That's the point.
I rambled on
Diversity.
about stuff.
No, you're good. Okay. What the next question? I think we just kind of went out of order. We told
That's all right.
the story.
Yeah,
So we just got
yeah.
to scan through and make sure we got it. What was the residential market like back when we decided to do it? I think we did talk about that. Do you want to talk? You did talk about 1 bedrooms versus 2 and 3. What is the Seattle housing market like now? Has it changed since Alley 11? Like as we go into this next one, kind of what are your observations about the housing market today?
Yeah, the market now is really interesting in Seattle. There's been so much multifamily developed that a lot of folks are converting their multifamily projects over to condos. And so we have a 2200 block that we bought last October that we are entitling now and expected to start construction in late next year. And so the market, it actually is a little flattening of the market now, but all of the supply that was coming is turning to condos, and which is good for us because we are hopeful to start construction and to deliver in a market where nobody else or very few is delivering multifamily at that time. And that's something we can do because we use our own money. We're our own banking contractor and developer. So we see a lot of opportunity there. Actually, 2&U was that same scenario, even though it's office. We were able to start that construction, and we're going to deliver that project in a window where nobody else is delivering, which gives us a huge leg up. So it's great.
The new residential will be rental as well, right? Do we not use
Correct.
condos generally?
We can't, yeah.
Okay, we cannot.
Well, I shouldn't say can't, but it's something that we would need to spend a lot of time on convincing folks that the risk reward with that makes sense. Skanska on the construction side has been burned for that. In Europe, we don't do really multifamily for rent. It's all multifamily for sale. So it's much more of a condo market, and we develop it all the time. In the U.S., it's just a different legal and liability structure.
Okay.
So.
Okay. This is a wide Bellevue question, which you answered because it was about foreclosure and the opportunity, really, right?
We just bought an office piece of land there, by the way,
Oh,
for a big tower. Yeah.
Oh wow. And our brand now for residential. So we said, what's the market like? But having done Alley 111, I want to just pause here for a second because we're kind of blazing past it. We haven't really said a ton about what it is and what it was. So
Oh yeah.
we know it's multifamily, but I want to. It wasn't in my questions. I apologize. But we did go and film there a couple of years ago. So just tell me a little bit about the final product and how we put our Skanska touch on a multifamily unit there. All the creative things we did at street level with the alley and incorporating that, and what kind of place to live did we create there?
Yeah, so Alley 111 is a 260 unit project in downtown Bellevue. It was actually a failed condo project itself that we purchased and repurposed to be a for-rent multifamily. One of the big signature moves of the project is there is an alley going through the site. There was a utility easement that made us have this big swath of land going through the eastern side. And it was funny because when you walked on the site before we started developing it, there was these pathways through the site that all of the community used to get through it. And so for us, it was like the perfect opportunity to like create a special alley that people could like use to get into the main CBD. We did move, the retail was on this really busy street, which was on Northeast 8th, which wouldn't make any sense at all. We convinced the city to move it to the alley and create this really special indoor-outdoor experience. And so we do focus, we believe that buildings are really known by their ground floors, and how can we create something special, again, not just for the tenants, but for the community and for the city as well. And so, that was a huge goal of ours that turned out exceptionally well. For the building itself, again, it really was meant to be a different product that wasn't in Bellevue. Bellevue was much more larger, 2-3 bedroom units, failed condos that were built, turned into rentals. And so we were working to create units and a product for a younger set. And the demographics in Bellevue used to be most people were 50, 60, 40s, stuff like that. In the past 10 years, it has shifted to be 20s and 30s more than most people even conceptualize. So when you looked at the demographics, it really made sense to create something different there. So we created a rooftop terrace and indoor-outdoor space again, but just for the tenants at the very top that most people think is the best in the city, with exceptional views and great interior space. And again, trying to create something special and different that'll feel like a home and keep people hopefully to stay there and not move out. Most buildings have turnover of about 50% a year. We were more like 60, 65% that we would keep people and they wouldn't move out. So.
Okay. I'll ask you a question. You tell me if you think we've already hit it. What is our brand like now in Seattle for residential? So I asked you generally, what's the development brand? Is there anything new you want to add? You talked about 2200 block, which is in here. But let's looking about. You mentioned taking our multifamily brand to the next level with this new one.
Yeah.
The community in Belltown up for a new tower to deliver something special. So tell me that. Where do you think the brand for residential sits today, and what's on the horizon?
So the brand for residential in Seattle is definitely still emerging. Bellevue and Seattle are very different markets, even though plenty of people, go to both markets. There's lots of people in Seattle that don't know what's going on in Bellevue at all, and the other way around. So this is our first Seattle multifamily project, and I would say the community is exceptionally excited about a new building from Skanska, more from our office work, actually. They know we focus on the ground floor and creating special local retail and creating amenity, not just for the tenants, but for the neighborhood. And so we had the community come out to our last city meeting, which is a design review board meeting, and they had 20 people there just demanding the design review board approve our project because they want a Skanska project in the neighborhood, which we've never seen that before. So it was really, we had to work with the community a lot, and that's what we do. The minute we bought the land, we were meeting with them, but we got them more excited in the project than we realized because they were actually there. So from a community brand, it's exceptionally well. From a tenant brand in Seattle, people don't really know our product, but we can tell just by the reaction from the community that we think we're going to have an exceptionally strong brand here.
Okay. Did we talk about divestment specifically? You said about as much to me as
I said we sold it. I mean, it did really well.
Right, because we sold it back to which was always the plan, I presume, to sell it back to the partner.
I mean, that was the most likely outcome. What we do is put our interest to them, and they decide if they want to go to the market with us or if they want to buy our interest. And they decided to buy our interest, which we expected because it was an 80-20 JV. They owned 80, we owned 20.
So I'm going to let you give this shout out. What did we learn? What were we able to transfer to other markets? And you kind of turned that around because I think our other markets had skill in developing residential, multifamily, just not at Skanska. I know this was true for our market. So I think I'll just let you answer that as you will. To your point earlier about there were other ones going on, the Boston ones going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So how do we knowledge share, transfer to other markets? At least maybe we in Boston were doing it around the same time. How did that get fed down to DC and RESA that's happening there?
I don't really have the answers to some of this, by the way.
It's
I mean, I
almost
don't, like, we were definitely all talking, but again, it was a little the wild, wild west. I mean, and I think we are much better now to knowledge share. Back then, we definitely knowledge shared, but it was organic, and it was not this thing where it was structured in any way. And so, yes, we learned from each other, but if you ask me what we learned from each other, I couldn't answer you.
Well, what did we learn from ourselves on the first residential one? On LA 111, what did we learn, period? Without, like, from each other or transferring to other markets, what did we learn doing that first residential one that we would carry forward to your next residential one?
I mean, I think we already had knowledge. Some of us had already developed these kinds of buildings, and so this was not for some of us. We knew the product type. You learned something from every development, no matter what. But I think from Skanska's perspective, we learned that we could have a whole another product type within our business that is absolutely acceptable from not only an internal Skanska perspective, but from our investors that buy our office and multifamily projects, and for them to do exceptionally well and make it a legitimate business stream of ours going forward. So between Alley 111 and Watermark Seaport, we really showed that this makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. Okay. We did diversity. Yeah, I think that you hit that about why it's important for us to do other things, not just office, even though we do office really well. You talked about it being less land. I think a lot of that you spoke to in your introductory things. Can I ask you, we ran over.
That's all right.
Do you have a hard stop, or the next one's
No, I just have a 2 o'clock.
Okay. This will be short. We're doing some fun questions with some of the other team members.